Her sister decorated the florist back room for Mother's Day. The guest list included 3 men her husband was at war with. Now, before we go anywhere, take this with you. Not everyone who throws you a party is celebrating you. Some are packaging you. Hold that close. You'll need it before the story is over. The florist back room smelled like gardenias and cold tile. Bianchi and Sons, a flower shop on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx that had been closed to the public since 2019 but never actually shut down. It existed for occasions that didn't need witnesses. Family sit-downs, private celebrations, conversations that couldn't happen anywhere with a security camera and a liquor license. Rebel Hartley arrived at 1 p.m., 6 months pregnant, white sundress, no sandals she could still buckle without asking for help, though that window was closing fast. In her left hand, she carried her mother's pocket watch, pearl-faced, gold chain. Stopped forever at 3:17, the minute Rebel was born. She brought it to every milestone, graduation, wedding, and now, her first Mother's Day. Her sister Sable had been planning this for weeks, called it a small shower/brunch, told Rebel to show up hungry and wear something she could stretch in. 15 people max, Sable had promised, iced, low-key, cozy. Rebel pushed through the back entrance. The room was not cozy. 30 guests, at minimum. Long tables draped in cream linen, centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus. A banner strung between exposed pipes. Happy First Mother's Day, Rebel, gold lettering on blush pink. A dessert station along the far wall. Tiered cake, macarons, a chocolate fountain that seemed aggressively excessive for low-key. Rebel scanned the room, found familiar faces first. Dario's cousin Serafina Pellegrino near the gift table. 2 wives from the family circle she'd had brunch with a handful of times. An aunt whose name she always forgot. Then she found the unfamiliar faces. 3 men at the back table. Dark suits, no gifts, no plates in front of them. They sat the way men sit when they're not guests. They're attendees, present with purpose, watching the room the way her husband's men watched rooms, calculating sightlines, noting exits. Except these weren't her husband's men. Rebel knew every soldier, associate, and driver in the Pellegrino operation by face, if not by name. 3 years of marriage to Dario had taught her the landscape of his world, not because he invited her in, but because she paid attention. These 3 men didn't belong to that landscape. The tallest one noticed her staring, held her gaze for 2 full seconds, then looked away, deliberately, not intimidated, disciplined, trained to observe without engaging. Rebel's hand tightened around the pocket watch. She moved through the room, accepting hugs, smiling, letting women touch her belly with the resigned patience of every pregnant woman who's learned that her body is apparently public property now. She reached Sable near the cake. Her sister looked immaculate, hair blown out, nails fresh. That outfit coordinated with the table linens, which meant she'd planned this with a level of detail that didn't match a casual brunch. "You said 15 people," Rebel said. It grew. Sable adjusted a flower arrangement without looking up. "You know how it is, word gets out." "Who are the 3 men at the back table?" Sable's fingers paused on a rose stem. 1 second, maybe less, then resumed. "Associates. They're connected to a shipping company Dario's been working with. They asked to come and pay respects." "Shipping associates don't wear signet rings, Sable." Her sister finally looked at her, smile intact, eyes wrong. The brightness in them wasn't joy. It was management. The look of someone controlling a situation by performing calm. "You're 6 months pregnant and paranoid," Sable said. Laughed, touched Rebel's arm. "Relax. Eat something. This is your day." Rebel didn't relax. She walked toward the restroom, past the back table on the way, close enough to hear one of the men speaking into his phone. Low voice, Italian dialect she half recognized, not the Neapolitan cadence Dario's family used. Something sharper, more northern. One word landed clean. Ferrante. Rebel's feet stopped. Ferrante. The name her husband kept behind closed doors. The family that controlled the ports from Philadelphia to Newark. The organization that had been bleeding into Pellegrino territory for 18 months. triggering late-night phone calls, canceled dinners, the kind of tension that lived in Dario's jaw even when he smiled. The Ferrantes were not shipping associates. The Ferrantes were the enemy, and 3 of them were sitting in her baby shower eating macarons. Rebel locked herself in the bathroom, pressed her back against the door, pulled out her phone. She called Dario. Straight to voicemail, called again, voicemail. Third time, voicemail. Her husband, a man who answered on the first ring when she called, always, without exception, was unreachable on Mother's Day while Ferrante men sat 20 feet from their unborn son. Rebel looked at herself in the mirror, white dress, round belly, her mother's pocket watch in her hand, stopped at 3:17, frozen in time. The way Rebel felt right now, caught between the moment before she knew and the moment after. She opened the watch, ran her thumb across the still hands, and underneath the watch face, pressed flat, barely visible, she saw the edge of a folded paper she'd never noticed before. Yellowed, thin, as tucked inside the mechanism by someone who wanted it found only when the watch was examined closely. A note, hidden by her mother, waiting for years. Rebel's fingers hovered over it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sable. "Come back to the party, there's someone you need to meet." And below that, a second text from a number Rebel didn't recognize. "Don't trust your sister today. D. Dario." From a number she'd never seen. "Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back. I mean that. Genuinely, from the chest. Wherever you are right now, curled up in bed, sitting in traffic, hiding in the break room pretending you're on a work call, I'm glad you chose to be here. You could be anywhere. You're here. That means something to me. 3 years earlier. Rebel Hartley met Dario Pellegrino because of a wrong delivery. She was 26. Running a nonprofit literacy program out of a repurposed church hall in East Harlem. 60 kids, 3 volunteers. A budget held together with grant applications and stubbornness. On a Tuesday in March, a truck pulled up outside the hall and unloaded $4,000 worth of fresh flowers, white lilies, peonies, Italian roses, meant for Bianchi and Sons on Arthur Avenue. Wrong address, wrong borough. The driver shrugged, said dispatch would sort it out, and left. Rebel stood on the sidewalk surrounded by flowers she couldn't use and couldn't afford to store. 30 minutes later, a black sedan parked across the street. A man stepped out, tall, dark hair pushed back, charcoal coat, the kind of posture that communicated authority without requesting attention. He walked toward her, looked at the flowers, looked at the church hall. Looked at Rebel. "Those are mine," he said. "Then you should have given your driver better directions." "He's not my driver. He works for the florist." "Then take it up with the florist." Dario Pellegrino studied her for 3 seconds. Not the way men usually studied Rebel. Not scanning, not appraising, processing. Like she was a sentence in a language he wanted to learn. "What is this place?" he asked. "A literacy program. We teach kids to read." "How many kids?" 60. "Why?" "Because I just watched you guard $4,000 of someone else's flowers like they were yours. That tells me something about how you protect things." Rebel crossed her arms. "It tells you I don't let strangers walk off with property that landed on my sidewalk." Dario almost smiled. Not quite. The corner of his mouth moved a fraction, the most restrained expression of delight Rebel had ever witnessed. "Keep the flowers," he said. "Consider them a donation." "From who?" "From the man whose driver can't read a map." He left. Rebel watched the sedan disappear around the corner. She didn't know his name, didn't know his world, didn't know that the flowers sitting on her sidewalk had originally been ordered for a meeting that would determine territorial control of 3 shipping routes along the East River. All she knew was that a stranger had looked at her, really looked, and decided she was worth $4,000 of Italian roses. Here's something about love that nobody warns you about. The most dangerous people don't seduce you with flash. They seduce you with attention. And with the specific kind of focus that makes you feel like the only clear signal in a world of static. And by the time you realize that attention came attached to a universe you didn't sign up for, you're already home. They married 14 months later. Small ceremony. A chapel in Carroll Gardens. Rebel wore her mother's pocket watch pinned to her bouquet. Dario wore a suit that cost more than her annual salary and looked at her like she was the only investment that ever mattered. His world revealed itself gradually, not in confessions, in textures. The way conversations stopped when she entered certain rooms, the way his phone rang at hours that belonged to emergencies, the way men she didn't know nodded at her in restaurants with a deference that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with whose ring she wore. Rebel wasn't naive. She assembled the picture piece by piece. Construction companies that generated more security than construction. A social club in Bensonhurst where the espresso machine was always on but the front door was always locked. Cousins who carried titles, consigliere, capo, that her husband never translated. She asked once, 6 months into the marriage, direct, the way Rebel asked everything. "What are you, Dario?" "Exactly." He set down his fork. Dinner table. Their brownstone in Park Slope. Candle is sun and candle burning, the kind of domestic scene that made the question feel almost absurd. "I'm a man who builds things," he said, "and protects what I build. Some of those methods aren't in textbooks. Are they in courtrooms? Not if I do my job correctly." Rebel held his gaze. La measured the weight of what he was offering. Partial truth. Enough to respect her intelligence, not enough to implicate her. She accepted it, not because she was passive, because she loved him, and because he'd drawn a line she hadn't asked him to draw. "The baby," he'd said, months later, the night they found out she was pregnant, pressing his forehead against her belly. "Our child stays outside of everything. No meetings, no obligations, no inheritance that comes with conditions. Promise me you understand that." "I understand," Rebel said. "Our son belongs to us, not to the family, not to the business. To us." She believed him. Now, Sable, Rebel's younger sister by 2 years. If Rebel was a compass, always pointing toward the thing that needed doing, Sable was weather. Beautiful, volatile. Capable of sunshine and destruction in the same afternoon. They grew up in Yonkers. Mother, a seamstress who died when Rebel was 19. Father, absent since birth. The kind of absence that wasn't dramatic, just permanent. A man who left and stayed left. Rebel raised Sable. Not officially, not legally, but functionally. She was the one who packed lunches and checked homework and sat outside Sable's bedroom door during the bad nights. The ones where Sable's depression pulled her underwater and held her there. Sable was brilliant, erratic, gifted at making you feel like the center of her universe, until she vanished. Weeks without calls, months without explanation. Then she'd reappear with gifts, apologies, and a warmth so intense it burned away every question you'd been saving. When Rebel married Dario, nay, Sable was the maid of honor, cried during the vows, hugged Dario afterward and whispered, "If you break her, I'll find a way to break you back." Everyone laughed. Dario didn't. But something shifted after the wedding. Sable started visiting more. Not just holidays, random Wednesdays. Saturday mornings, she'd bring pastries, sit at Rebel's kitchen table, ask casual questions about Dario's schedule, his travels, his meetings. "You're suddenly very interested in my husband," Rebel joked once. "I'm interested in my sister's life," Sable corrected. Smiled, changed the subject. Rebel didn't think about it again. She should have. Because 18 months before Mother's Day, in a hotel room in Atlantic City that Rebel knew nothing about, Sable Hartley sat across from a man named Constantino Ferrante and signed a piece of paper that traded the only thing she had left worth trading: access. Access to Rebel, to the Pellegrino inner circle, to information that flowed freely from a trusting wife to a sister she'd never learned to question. And now, with a baby arriving in 3 months, the Ferrantes wanted their final payment, not information. The child, Mother's Day, 1:23 p.m. Florist backroom bathroom. Rebel read the text again. "Don't trust your sister today." 7 words from a number she'd never seen. No contact name, no follow-up. Just a grenade tossed into her phone screen and silence afterward. She called the number. Dead, not voicemail. Not ringing, the flat digital nothing of a line that existed once and had already been erased. Dario sent this. She was certain The initial, the cadence, the way he delivered warnings, compressed, direct, stripped of anything that wasn't essential. 3 years of marriage had taught her his rhythms the way musicians learn time signatures. This was him. But why a burner? Why today? And why couldn't he answer his real phone while texting her from a ghost number? Rebel pocketed the phone, looked at the pocket watch still open in her other hand, the yellowed paper tucked behind the face, her mother's hidden note, pressed against the frozen hands like it had been waiting for exactly this kind of moment. She wanted to pull it out, read it, but the paper was fragile, and her fingers were unsteady, not from fear. Yeah, from the specific vibration of a woman whose instincts have been confirmed, and whose next move will determine everything. The note would wait, Sable wouldn't. Rebel walked back into the party. The room had shifted while she was gone. The 3 Ferrante men at the back table were no longer seated. They'd moved, dispersed into the crowd like ink dropped into water. One near the gift table, one by the entrance, one standing next to Sable near the dessert station, speaking close to her ear. Sable was nodding. Small, tight movements. The nod of someone receiving instructions, not conversation. Rebel intercepted her. "We need to talk, now." "Rebel, not right now. The cake cutting is in 10 minutes and—" "Now, Sable." Something in Rebel's voice shut down the performance. Sable's smile dissolved. She glanced at the Ferrante man beside her. A micro-glance, barely a flicker, then followed Rebel through a side door into the florist's front shop. The shop was dark, closed for the event. Refrigerated cases hummed along the walls, filled with arrangements nobody would buy today. The air smelled like cold stems and preservative chemicals. Rebel turned to face her sister. "Who is Constantino Ferrante?" Sable's composure held for approximately 2 seconds. Then something behind her eyes rearranged. Not panic, but recalculation. The rapid internal math of someone who's been caught mid-operation and needs to choose between denial and damage control. "Where did you hear that name?" "Wrong answer. Try again." "Rebel, there are 3 Ferrante men in my baby shower. My husband is unreachable. And you, my sister, you who organized this entire event, are standing next to one of them taking instructions like you're on payroll." Rebel stepped closer. "So I'm going to ask you one more time. Who is Constantino Ferrante, and why is he here?" Sable pressed her back against a refrigerated case. The glass fogged where her body heat met the cold. "He's a businessman. He reached out to me 3 weeks ago, said he wanted to broker a peace between his family and Dario's, a partnership, something that would benefit everyone, including you and the baby." "A peace brokered through my baby shower? Without telling me? Without telling Dario?" "Dario knows." The words landed like a slap made of ice. "Excuse me?" "Dario knows, Rebel. He's been in discussions with Ferrante representatives for weeks. This event, today, was supposed to be the introduction. Neutral ground, informal, a way to bring the families together without the weight of a formal sit-down." Rebel's mind split into 2 tracks. Track 1, processing Sable's words. Track 2, comparing them against Dario's text. Don't trust your sister today. If Dario was part of this arrangement, why would he warn Rebel against Sable? If this was sanctioned, legitimate, why the burner phone? Why the secrecy? One of them was lying. Stop here. Because this is where most people make the wrong choice. When 2 people you love give you contradictory information, the instinct is to choose the one you trust more, to pick a side, to assign villain and victim based on history rather than evidence. But the smartest move, the hardest move, is to trust neither. Collect, observe. Let the liars reveal themselves by watching which version of the truth survives contact with facts. Rebel understood this, and it saved her. "If Dario knows," Rebel said slowly, "then why can't I reach him? He's handling logistics, security arrangements. He wanted you to enjoy the party without worrying about—" Stop managing me." Rebel held up her hand. "You've been managing me since I walked through that door. The decorations, the smile, the relax, eat something, all of it was choreography. You were staging me." Sable's mouth opened, closed, no sound. "What does Ferrante actually want, Sable? Not the brochure version, the real version." Silence. The refrigerators hummed. Somewhere in the back room, someone laughed. the party continuing without its guest of honor. Without the woman whose name was on the banner in gold letters. Sable's eyes filled, not performance tears, the kind Rebel recognized from childhood, from the bad nights, the underwater nights, tears that came from a place beyond strategy. "He wants the baby," Sable whispered. 3 words, each one a detonation. He wants a blood alliance, Pellegrino and Ferrante, bound by a child raised in both families, a bridge between the organizations, shared custody, shared blood, permanent peace. And you, what? You agreed to this? I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Sable. Not everyone has a debt. Debt. The word cracked something open, a door Rebel hadn't known existed in her sister's story. What debt? Sable wiped her face, mascara streaking. Yeah, the polished veneer of the event planner dissolving into something raw and frightened. 2 years ago, Atlantic City. I overdosed in a hotel room, alone. No one knew where I was. The Ferrantes found me, Constantino's people. They got me to a private clinic, kept it out of every record, saved my life. Rebel's stomach tightened. The baby shifted, a slow roll, left to right, as if repositioning to hear better. "And the price?" Rebel asked, already knowing the answer lived somewhere she didn't want to reach. "Access, information about Dario's operations, meeting schedules, shipping routes. I've been feeding them intelligence for 18 months. Sable's voice dropped to something barely audible. "And when you got pregnant, they changed the terms. Information wasn't enough anymore. They wanted the child. Yeah, and they told me if I didn't deliver, they'd tell you about the overdose, about everything. And then they'd come for the baby anyway." The shop went silent. Even the refrigerators seemed to hold their breath. Rebel looked at her sister, the girl she'd raised, the girl she'd packed lunches for, the girl whose bedroom door she'd sat outside during the darkest nights. That girl had sold her nephew to pay for her own resurrection. And somewhere in this city, unreachable, operating from a burner phone, Rebel's husband either knew everything or knew nothing. She needed to find out which. Mother's Day, 2:14 p.m. Rebel didn't go back to the party. She walked through the florist's front shop, past the dark refrigerated cases, through the main entrance and onto Arthur Avenue. May air, warm. The Bronx moving at Sunday speed, families heading to restaurants, church crowds dispersing. The ordinary rhythm of a city that didn't know a woman's child had just been priced and packaged in a back room full of peonies. She stood on the sidewalk, 6 months pregnant, white sundress, mother's pocket watch in one hand, phone in the other. Think. Think like the woman who guarded $4,000 of someone else's flowers on a sidewalk in East Harlem. Think like the woman who built a literacy program from nothing. Think like a mother, because that's what you are now, even if the baby hasn't arrived yet. Sable was compromised. The Ferrantes owned her. The party was a staged introduction, a way to normalize their presence in Rebel's life before the real transaction. Dario was a question mark. His warning text said don't trust Sable. But Sable said Dario was part of the arrangement. One of them was the wall between Rebel and danger. The other was the door letting it in. She needed to know which was which. Rebel opened her phone. The burner text from Dario was still on screen. The number was dead. She'd already tried, but the message contained something she'd missed on first read. The dash before the D, not a hyphen, an EM dash. Dario never used M dashes in texts. He typed the way he spoke, short, clean, no punctuation flourishes. But in documents, contracts, letters, formal communications, he used M dashes obsessively. His consigliere, Primo Cataldo, had once joked about it. The man signs death warrants with proper grammar. This text wasn't casual, it was composed. Written with intention by a man who wanted Rebel to recognize his voice even through an anonymous number, which meant he'd anticipated this moment, planned for it, known that Mother's Day would be the day everything surfaced, and prepared a lifeline she could trace. Rebel scrolled through her contacts, found Primo Cataldo. Primo answered on the second ring. "Rebel, Happy Mother's Day. Where is my husband?" Pause. The kind of pause that carries calculation behind it. He's handling something. He asked not to be disturbed. Primo, there are Ferrante soldiers in my baby shower. My sister just told me they want my child as a Blood Alliance pledge, and Dario sent me a warning from a burner phone and then went dark. So I need you to understand, I'm not asking where my husband is. I'm telling you to connect me to him in the next 60 seconds, or I walk into a police station and let the NYPD sort out who's protecting me and who's selling my baby. 7 seconds of silence. Hold the line, Primo said. 40 seconds. Click. Breath on the other end. Then Dario's voice, low, controlled, carrying the specific tension of a man operating in real time. Are you out of the building? I'm on Arthur Avenue. Good. Walk south. 2 blocks. There's a coffee shop on the corner of 187th. Moretti's. Go inside. Sit at the back. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Dario, 20 minutes. I'll explain everything. But right now I need you off that street, and somewhere the Ferrantes aren't watching. They're watching the street? They've been watching you for 3 months. Please, Moretti's, back table. 20 minutes. He hung up. Rebel walked south, fast. The kind of fast that a 6 months pregnant woman can manage when adrenaline overrides anatomy. Moretti's was half empty. Sunday afternoon lull. She ordered decaf, sat at the back, faced the door. The pocket watch sat on the table in front of her, pearl face catching the overhead light, hands frozen at 3:17. She thought about the hidden note inside. Her mother's handwriting on yellowed paper, tucked behind the watch face like a secret sewn into a seam. She still hadn't read it. Part of her was afraid. Her mother had been a seamstress, quiet, precise, protective, a woman who hid things in linings and hems. If she'd hidden a note inside the watch, it wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calibrated, meant to be found at the exact moment it was needed. Maybe this was that moment. Rebel reached for the watch. The door opened. Dario walked in. Let me pause here. Because what happens next requires context. When someone you love has been keeping secrets, the confrontation isn't just about the secret, it's about the architecture. How long did they know? What did they choose to hide? And most importantly, was the hiding done to protect you or to protect themselves? That distinction is everything, because protection looks like betrayal from the outside, and betrayal sometimes disguises itself as protection. The only way to tell the difference is to sit across from the person and watch what happens when you demand the whole truth. When they flinch, that's guilt. When they hold steady and show you the wound, that's love. Watch what Dario does next. He looked exhausted. Not the surface kind, the kind that lives behind the eyes when a man has been running an operation he can't discuss, protecting a woman he can't warn, and fighting an enemy who's using his own sister-in-law as a weapon. He sat across from Rebel, didn't order, didn't speak first, gave her the floor. The one smart thing a man can do when his wife is holding a detonator. Talk, Rebel said. 3 weeks ago, Primo intercepted a communication between Sable and Constantino Ferrante. A voice message. Sable was confirming details for today. The shower, the guest list, the Ferrante attendees. You've known for 3 weeks. I've known about the arrangement for 3 weeks. I've suspected Sable was compromised for longer. How much longer? 6 months. Since you told me you were pregnant, Sable's behavior changed. More visits. More questions about my schedule. The pattern was consistent with intelligence gathering. Rebel's chest burned. You suspected my sister was spying on us for 6 months, and you said nothing. If I told you, your behavior towards Sable would have changed. She would have noticed, reported it, and the Ferrantes would have accelerated, moved on the baby before we had a counter strategy. So you used my ignorance as cover. I used your trust in your sister as the one thing keeping the Ferrantes patient enough for me to build a wall around you and our son. Dario leaned forward. I know how that sounds. I know what it cost you to not know. And I will carry that debt for the rest of my life. But if I'd told you 3 weeks ago, or 6 months ago, Constantino Ferrante would have taken direct action. Kidnapping, coercion, force. The only thing keeping him civil was the belief that the arrangement was proceeding on schedule. What arrangement exactly? Sable promised them the baby. not custody, blood rights. A formal alliance, sealed by our son being raised partially within the Ferrante household. Shared blood, shared loyalty. A permanent bridge. Over my dead body. Over mine first. Dario's voice dropped. Which is why I've spent 3 weeks building something the Ferrantes don't know exists. What? A way out. For you. For the baby. And, if you want it, for Sable. Rebel stared at her husband, the man who hid a war inside their marriage to keep her standing, the man who watched her sister betray them and chose strategy over fury because fury would have gotten his family killed. She wanted to hate him for the silence. Part of her did. But the larger part, the part that had watched him press his forehead against her belly and promised their son would never be currency, recognized what she was looking at, not a liar, a man fighting in a language she was only now learning to read. Show me, Rebel said. Show me everything. Mother's Day, 3:07 p.m., Moretti's coffee shop. Dario pulled a phone from his jacket. Not his main phone. Not the burner he'd texted from. A third device, matte black, no case, screen cracked in one corner like it had been carried in tight spaces in rough conditions. This is the operation phone, he said. Everything is on here. 3 weeks of counter-strategy. Every move I've made since Primo intercepted Sable's message. He placed it on the table between them, unlocked it, turned the screen toward Rebel. She saw folders. I'm labeled with dates. Inside, audio files, surveillance photographs, intercepted texts, and a document titled Exodus Protocol. Exodus? Rebel said. The exit plan. For all 3 of us. 3. You, the baby, and Sable. Rebel looked at him. You're building an escape route for the woman who sold our child. I'm building an escape route for your sister. Because if I don't, the Ferrantes will kill her the moment this arrangement falls apart. And I won't let you carry that. The plan was layered, meticulous, built with the architectural precision of a man who constructed empires for a living. Phase 1, already complete. Dario had spent 3 weeks feeding Sable false information through Rebel, meeting times that didn't exist, shipping routes that led nowhere, financial projections that bore no resemblance to real Pellegrino operations. Everything Sable had passed to the Ferrantes in the last 21 days was engineered fiction. You used me as a disinformation channel, Rebel said. Not a question. I used the information you naturally shared with Sable. I just made sure what you knew was what I wanted the Ferrantes to hear. Without telling me. Without telling you. Yes. The honesty was blunt. No apology wrapped around it. No justification layered on top. Just the raw admission of a man who knew he'd crossed a line and was choosing to stand on the wrong side of it rather than pretend he hadn't. Phase 2. The Mother's Day shower itself. Dario had allowed it to proceed. Let the Ferrantes attend. Let Constantino's men enter the room and observe. Why? Rebel asked. Why let them get that close to me? Because today is the day they commit. Constantino came in person. His men are visible, documented. Primo has a team outside Bianchi's right now, photographing every Ferrante associate who entered the building. License plates, phone signals, communication intercepts. You're building a case. I'm building a record. One that gets delivered to the Federal Organized Crime Task Force on Tuesday morning. Everything the Ferrantes have done, the coercion of Sable, the attempted trafficking of an unborn child, the infiltration of a rival family through extortion, all of it packaged and handed to people who will use it to dismantle Constantino's operation from the inside out. Rebel processed this, the scale of it. Her husband hadn't just been protecting their family, and he'd been constructing the Ferrantes' destruction using their own aggression as the blueprint. And Sable's immunity? Rebel asked. Negotiated. Primo's attorney has a draft agreement with the task force. Sable cooperates, full testimony, full disclosure. And she walks. No charges. Witness protection if she needs it. Here's the lesson I want you to hold right now. In the middle of this story, in the middle of this mess, when someone who loves you goes silent, don't assume the worst. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone fighting a war they can't show you. Not because they don't trust you, but because showing you would put you in the crossfire. That doesn't make the silence okay. It doesn't erase the hurt. But understanding the difference between silence that protects and silence that deceives, that understanding is what separates couples who survive from couples who don't. Hold on to that. We're not done yet. Rebel sat back in her chair, hands on her belly. The baby was active, kicking in patterns she'd started to recognize. Two quick, one slow. His rhythm. His personality already forming inside her. "There's something I haven't shown you yet," Dario said. "The nursery." Rebel's jaw tightened. Serafina mentioned a second nursery being built at a property in Red Hook, a property I've never been to. "You thought I was building a place to take the baby." The thought crossed my mind. "Come with me after this. I'll show you what it actually is." "Tell me now." Dario paused. Something in his expression softened, not strategically, and not performatively. The way a man's face changes when he's about to reveal something tender inside a conversation built entirely from wreckage. "It's a safe house for you and the baby. Fully furnished, medical equipment, security infrastructure, private entrance. No connection to the Pellegrino name on any document." He looked at the table. "I started building it the week you told me you were pregnant. Before I knew about Sable. Before the Ferrantes. Before any of this. Why? Because I know what I am, Rebel. I know the world I operate in. And I wanted a place that existed completely outside of it. A place where you and our son could go if my world ever reached our front door." He met her eyes. "It was supposed to be your Mother's Day gift. Before everything else happened." Rebel felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness. That was too large and too earned to arrive in a coffee shop on a Sunday afternoon. But recognition. The acknowledgement that the man sitting across from her had been carrying two simultaneous operations, one against the Ferrantes and one for her, without ever letting her see the weight. She reached for the pocket watch, set it on the table between them. "There's something I need to do," she said. She opened the watch, carefully, worked the pearl face loose from the casing with her thumbnail. The yellowed paper sat underneath, folded twice, pressed flat by years of compression against the mechanism. Rebel unfolded it, her mother's handwriting, small, precise, the penmanship of a seamstress who understood that details were everything. "My Rebel, if you're reading this, you found it at the right time. Your grandmother always said this watch would know when to open itself. There's something I never told you about your father. He didn't leave because he stopped loving us. He left because Constantino Ferrante gave him a choice, his family or his debt. He chose to disappear so the debt wouldn't follow you and Sable. The Ferrantes have been circling this family for longer than you know. Your father borrowed from them before you were born. When he couldn't repay, they offered an alternative, access, influence, future leverage. He refused, and they took everything else instead. If they've come back, and I believe they will, know this: you owe them nothing. Your blood is not their currency. Your children are not their collateral. Fight, baby, the way I taught you, with your eyes open. All my love, always." Mama Rebel read it twice. 3 times, each pass driving the words deeper. Her father didn't abandon them. He was driven out by the same family now standing in her baby shower claiming her son. The Ferrantes hadn't found Rebel through Sable. Sable was just the latest door. They'd been circling the Hartley family for over 25 years, waiting for the next generation to produce something worth collecting. Her baby. The debt her father refused to pay, repackaged as a blood alliance and presented on Mother's Day like a gift. Rebel folded the note, placed it inside the watch, closed the case, looked at Dario with eyes that held no confusion left, only direction. "We're not running," Shibasa said. "We're ending this. Permanently." Mother's Day, 5:41 p.m. Rebel and Dario never made it to the safe house. They were 3 blocks from Moretti's when Primo called, voice clipped, the cadence of a man delivering bad news while already managing its consequences. "We have a problem. Sable's gone." Dario pressed the phone harder against his ear. "Gone how?" "She left Bianchi's 40 minutes ago. Through the service entrance. One of Constantino's men went with her. We tracked them to a vehicle on 187th, black Escalade Jersey plates. They drove south. We lost them at the Willis Avenue Bridge. South, toward Manhattan, toward the tunnels, toward Jersey, toward Ferrante territory. Dario looked at Rebel. She'd heard everything. His phone volume was high enough to carry Primo's words through the car like shrapnel. They took her, Rebel said, or she went willingly. Does it matter? She's with them. It mattered. It mattered enormously. Because a Sable who was taken could be rescued. A Sable who went willingly was a woman choosing the Ferrantes over her sister. Again. And that was a wound no operation could fix. Dario drove to the Pellegrino Social Club in Bensonhurst, the one with the locked front door and the espresso machine that never stopped running. He brought Rebel inside, not because she asked, but because leaving her anywhere alone with Ferrante operatives unaccounted for was a risk he refused to calculate. The back room was already occupied. Primo Cataldo standing at a table covered with surveillance photographs and a laptop showing vehicle tracking data. Serafina Pellegrino in the corner, phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapid Italian to someone on the other end. And a man Rebel had never seen. Mid-40s, slim, wearing glasses that didn't match his build. He looked like an accountant seated at a war council. "This is Federico Mancini," Dario said. "He's been our intermediary with the federal task force." Federico nodded at Rebel. Professional. No warmth, no hostility. The neutrality of a man whose entire career existed in the space between families and the government agencies that wanted to destroy them. "We have a timing problem," Federico said. "The federal package was scheduled for Tuesday delivery. If the Ferrantes have Sable now, willing or not, they'll debrief her tonight. She knows about the shower surveillance. She knows Rebel confronted her. Once Constantino understands that his operation has been observed, he'll move to destroy evidence and disappear before Tuesday." "Then we move the delivery up," Dario said. To when?" "Tonight." The room recalibrated. Primo's hand stopped over the keyboard. Serafina lowered her phone. Federico removed his glasses and cleaned them. The gesture of a man buying himself 3 seconds to process an impossible acceleration. "Tonight means the package is incomplete," Federico said. "We have surveillance, communication intercepts, documentation of Ferrante presence at the shower. But we don't have Sable's testimony. Without her cooperation, the trafficking component weakens significantly." "Then we get Sable back," Rebel said. Every head turned. She stood near the doorway, 6 months pregnant, white sundress now wrinkled from a day that had dismantled her life in increments, pocket watch in her hand, her mother's note folded inside, a 25-year-old warning that the Ferrantes would return. They had returned, and they had her sister. "Sable is the key to the entire federal case," Rebel continued. "Without her testimony, the trafficking charge collapses. Without the trafficking charge, Constantino faces surveillance-level offenses, fines, maybe probation. He walks, and he comes back for the baby." Federico looked at Dario. "She's not wrong." "I'm aware," Dario said. "I can reach Sable," Rebel said. "Absolutely not," Dario said. Fast, reflexive, the response of a man whose protective instincts operated faster than his logic. "Listen to me. Sable left that party because she's terrified. Of the Ferrantes. Of you. Of me finding out the truth, which I already have. She's running because she thinks every door is closed. But I'm her sister. I'm the one door she's never been able to shut completely." Here's what desperation looks like when it wears a mother's face. It's not reckless, it's not blind, it's the coldest, clearest form of calculation. A woman measuring every risk against the one outcome she will not accept. Rebel wasn't volunteering out of heroism. She was volunteering because the alternative was watching her sister disappear into a machine that would use her until she was empty and then discard her. And because the child inside her would one day ask about Aunt Sable. And Rebel refused to answer that question with, "I let her go." Dario pulled Rebel into the hallway, away from the room, away from the operation, into the narrow corridor between the kitchen and the locked front door, where the light was dim and the walls held decades of conversations that never happened. "You're 6 months pregnant," he said. "You keep saying that like I've forgotten. You're asking me to let you walk into Ferrante-controlled space? I'm asking you to trust me the way I'm choosing to trust you. Right now, despite everything. Rebel stepped closer. You spent 3 weeks fighting a war inside our marriage without telling me. You used my ignorance to protect me. Fine. I understand it. I hate it. But I understand it. Now I need you to understand something. She pressed his hand against her belly. The baby kicked, hard, on cue, as if the boy already understood the importance of timing. This is my son, my sister, my family. And I will not sit in a back room while other people decide whether they survive the night. Daria looked at her hand over his, felt his son's heartbeat through her skin. If anything goes wrong, then you come get me, the way you always do. But let me try first. He closed his eyes. 3 seconds. The longest 3 seconds of Rebel's life. Primo drives you. 2 men in a trail car, you wear a wire. And the moment anything feels wrong, you say the word and we extract. What word? Rosary. Rebel almost smiled. Almost. The situation was too heavy for smiling, but the choice of word, her mother's pocket watch, the rosary inside, the prayers of a woman who'd been fighting the Ferrantes before Rebel was born, landed with a precision that felt inherited. Rosary, she repeated. Primo brought the car around at 7:15 p.m. Yeah, black sedan, tinted windows, a wire so small it looked like a thread woven into the strap of Rebel's dress. She sat in the back seat, pocket watch in her lap, phone dark. The city moving past the windows in streaks of light and shadow. Mother's Day winding down for everyone except the woman driving south toward the family that wanted her child. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text from Sable. I'm sorry, Ro, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. Rebel typed back. Steady fingers, steady voice, steady heart. Tell me where you are. I'm coming. 40 seconds. The longest 40 seconds of the drive. Then coordinates, a pin drop, an address in Jersey City, and one more line from Sable. Please come alone. Mother's Day, 8:22 p.m. Jersey City. The address was a laundromat. Closed. Ew, lights off. A faded sign reading Estrella Wash and Fold hanging crooked above a door that hadn't welcomed a customer in months. The kind of business that exists on paper for reasons that have nothing to do with laundry. Primo parked across the street, engine running, eyes scanning. I don't like this, he said. You don't have to like it. You have to let me walk in. 2 minutes. If I don't hear your voice on the wire in 2 minutes, we come in. 3 minutes. 2.5? Fine. Rebel stepped out. May evening. The air smelled like the Hudson. Salt, diesel, something industrial underneath. Jersey City's waterfront had been polished into condos and coffee shops on one side. This side still belonged to the version of the city that didn't photograph well. She walked to the door, knocked twice. It opened from inside. No one visible. Just darkness and the smell of detergent and stale heat from machines that hadn't been used in weeks. Rebel stepped in. Sable sat on a folding table near the back. Legs dangling, shoes off. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. Mascara gone, eyes swollen. The polished event planner from this afternoon dissolved into something Rebel recognized from 20 years ago. The girl on the bad nights. The girl who went underwater. No Ferrante men visible. The room appeared empty except for the two of them. Industrial washers lining the walls, fluorescent lights off, a single lamp on the counter casting everything in yellow. You came alone? Sable asked, voice raw. I came, Rebel said, not answering the question, not lying either. Sable accepted it, too exhausted to parse. Rebel pulled a plastic chair from against the wall, sat down 3 feet from her sister, close enough to read every micro-expression, far enough to maintain the boundary that this conversation required. Where's the Ferrante escort? Rebel asked. Gianluca. He drove me here, went to make a call. He'll be back in 20 minutes. Then we have 20 minutes. For what? For you to decide what happens next. Sable's face crumpled. I don't get to decide anything, Rebel. I haven't decided anything in 2 years. They own me, every choice, every move. It's all been managed. I thought I was paying off a debt, and instead I was digging deeper into one that doesn't have a bottom. There is a bottom, and you're looking at it. Rebel leaned forward, elbows on knees, the pocket watch pressed between her palms like a talisman. I know about the overdose. I know about Atlantic City. I know Constantino's people saved your life and then bought it. Sable flinched. And I know about Dad. That landed differently. Sable's head came up, eyes wide, the look of someone hearing a word in a language they'd forgotten they spoke. What about Dad? Rebel opened the pocket watch, removed the note, unfolded it and held it out. Sable read it, slowly, lips moving slightly with each line. When she reached the end, her hands dropped to her lap and she stared at the paper like it had rewritten her entire history in 30 seconds. Because it had. Dad didn't leave us, Sable whispered. The Ferrantes drove him out. He owed them money before we were born. They wanted access, future leverage. He refused. So they took everything else, and he disappeared to keep the debt from following us. It followed us anyway. It followed you, because they found the daughter who was drowning and threw her a rope made of chains. Sable pressed her fists against her eyes, the gesture of a woman trying to push tears back into a place they couldn't escape from. I didn't know, Rebel, about Dad, about any of it. I thought he just left. I thought we weren't enough. I know. And when Constantino found me in that hotel room, when his people carried me to that clinic, I felt seen for the first time since Mom died. Someone chose to save me. Someone thought I was worth saving. And all they asked was small things at first. A name here, a schedule there. It felt like repayment, like fairness. Until they asked for my baby. Sable's breath hitched. Not a sob. Something deeper. The sound of a woman confronting the exact moment she became the thing she swore she'd never be. When they changed the term, when Salvatore told me the final payment was the child, I tried to say no. I said no 3 times, Rebel. And each time they reminded me what they could do. Expose me to Dario. Tell you about the overdose, or worse, take the baby by force and remove me from the equation entirely. So you cooperated. I survived, the way I've always survived, by making myself useful to whoever held the power. Stop. Hear what Sable just said, because it's not an excuse. It's a diagnosis. Some people learn early that safety comes from usefulness, that love is transactional, that if you stop being valuable, you stop being kept. Yeah, this is what happens when a father vanishes and a mother dies, and the world teaches you that people leave unless you give them a reason to stay. Sable didn't sell her nephew out of malice. She sold access to her family because she'd been trained by absence, by grief, by a debt she inherited without knowing, to believe that her only currency was what she could provide. Understanding this doesn't make it okay, but it makes it human, and human is where repair begins. Rebel set the pocket watch on the table between them, Pearl face up, hands frozen at 3:17. You have a choice right now, Rebel said. A real one. Maybe the first real one you've had in 2 years. What choice? Dario has built a federal case against the Ferrantes. Surveillance, communication intercepts, documentation of everything they've done, including the coercion of you. There's an immunity agreement drafted. You testify. Full disclosure. And you walk away free. No charges, no prison. Protection if you need it. Sable stared at her. Dario would do that? After what I've done to his family? Dario built it for me, because he knows that if you go down, I go down with you. Not legally, emotionally. You're my sister. And losing you to the Ferrantes would be a wound I'd carry into that delivery room and every room after. Rebel reached across the space between them, took Sable's hand, held it the way she used to hold it during their father's absence, and their mother's illness, and every storm that had ever battered the Hartley sisters. Come home, Sable, testify, end this. End. And then we figure out the rest. You and me. The way we figured out everything since we were kids. Sable looked at their joined hands, looked at the pocket watch, looked at the note from a mother who'd spent her life hiding warnings in seams and linings for daughters she knew would need them. Gianluca comes back in 8 minutes, Sable said. Then we leave in 7. Sable slid off the table, put her shoes on, picked up the pocket watch and pressed it against her chest, holding their mother close one more time. I'm scared, Ro. I know, so am I, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Sable nodded, one firm nod. Decision made. They walked out together, into the May night. Han across the street toward Primo's sedan where the engine was still running, and a man who'd been counting seconds exhaled for the first time in 11 minutes. Rebel opened the back door. Sable climbed in first. And for the first time in 2 years, Sable Hartley chose her sister over her survival, which meant, for the first time in 2 years, they were the same thing. Mother's Day, 9:47 p.m., Bensonhurst Social Club. Primo drove fast. No conversation. Sable sat beside Rebel in the back seat, hands folded in her lap, staring forward with the hollow focus of a woman who'd just defected from one life into another. Rebel held the pocket watch, thumb running over the pearl face. The baby kicked steadily, 2 quick, 1 slow, his rhythm unchanged by the chaos surrounding him. A boy who didn't know yet that his mother had just rewritten his future in a laundromat in Jersey City. They arrived at the social club at 9:52 p.m. Dario was waiting outside, standing under the single streetlight, coat off, sleeves rolled, the posture of a man who'd been pacing. He saw Rebel first, then Sable. His expression cycled through 3 phases in under a second: relief, calculation, decision. He opened Rebel's door, helped her out, held her face in both hands for a moment that lasted longer than the operation could afford. "You're okay," he said. "I'm okay. She's ready." Dario looked past Rebel to Sable, still seated in the car. Their eyes met. The man whose family she'd betrayed, and the woman who'd sold the betrayal because she didn't know another way to survive. "Come inside," Dario said. Not warmly, not coldly, but with the measured neutrality of a man who understood that this woman was simultaneously the threat and the solution. Sable stepped out, didn't speak, followed them through the locked front door, inside. Organized urgency. Federico Mancini was on the phone, 2 laptops open, documents spread across the table. The federal package, evidence, intercepts, surveillance photographs, being assembled in real time for delivery that had been accelerated by 12 hours. Primo took a position by the door. Serafina coordinated with someone on a second line. The social club hummed with the controlled energy of people executing a plan under pressure. Federico hung up, looked at Sable. "I need a recorded statement, full timeline, every interaction with Constantino Ferrante, Salvatore Ferrante, and any associate who facilitated communications or payments, every piece of intelligence you provided, every instruction you received." Sable sat down, hands flat on the table, steadying herself. "How long do I have? Constantino will know you're missing within the hour. Once he realizes you've flipped, he'll start destroying evidence. So, you have exactly as long as it takes you to talk fast." Sable talked. For 43 minutes, she dismantled 2 years of Ferrante intelligence operations from the inside out. Names, dates, locations, the Atlantic City clinic where they'd treated her overdose and begun the recruitment, the encrypted app they used for communication, the P.O. box in Newark where she mailed physical documents too sensitive for digital transmission, the code phrases, garden update for shipping schedules, family recipe for financial data, nursery plans for information about the baby. She named Gianluca Ferrante, Constantino's nephew, as her primary handler. Named a Ferrante attorney in Philadelphia who drafted the Blood Alliance documents. Named a corrupt Port Authority official who'd been facilitating Ferrante cargo movements using intelligence Sable had stolen from the Pellegrinos. Federico recorded everything, cross-referenced against existing evidence, built connections that turned individual data points into a prosecutable constellation. Rebel sat in the corner and watched her sister disassemble the architecture of her own captivity. Each name Sable spoke cost her something: safety, anonymity, the illusion that what she'd done could stay buried. And she spoke them anyway, one after another, until the table was covered in the wreckage of a life she'd never chosen, but had stopped resisting. At 10:34 p.m., Primo's phone rang. He answered, listened. His face changed. "Constantino knows," he said. Gianluca returned to the laundromat, found it empty. "They've activated communication protocols. Every Ferrante operative in the tri-state area just received a coded alert." "How long before they trace her here?" Dario asked. "They won't trace her. They'll come to you directly. Constantino knows this club. He knows you operate from here. And he's not the kind of man who waits for the FBI to knock when he can knock first. If you're watching this and your heart rate just jumped, good. Stay with me. Because what happens in the next 30 minutes is the difference between a family that survives and a family that scatters." And Rebel Hartley, 6 months pregnant, running on adrenaline and love and a mother's pocket watch that stopped ticking 27 years ago, is about to face the man who's been hunting her bloodline since before she was born. Drop a comment. Tell me what you'd do. Would you run? Would you stay? Would you stand? Rebel stood. Dario moved fast. Security positions established. Primo at the back entrance. Serafina relocated Sable and Federigo to the basement, a reinforced room originally built for a different era of Pellegrino operations, now serving as a witness protection bunker, with a direct phone line to the federal task force. Rebel refused to go to the basement. "I'm staying," she said. "Rebel, he's been circling my family for 25 years. My father ran, my sister broke. I'm not doing either. And I'm the one Hartley who stands in the room and tells Constantino Ferrante that the debt is canceled." Dario looked at her, the woman who'd guarded someone else's flowers on a sidewalk, who'd built a literacy program with nothing, who'd walked into a laundromat in Jersey City tonight and walked out with her sister's freedom. He didn't argue. "Stay behind me," he said. "Beside you," she corrected. Constantino Ferrante arrived at 11:08 p.m. No army. No theatrics. He came with 2 men, Gianluca and a driver who stayed in the car. Constantino understood that overwhelming force at a rival's stronghold was suicide. This was a negotiation, or what he believed was a negotiation. He walked through the front door that Dario unlocked for him, into the social club, past the espresso machine. Into the back room where Rebel and Dario waited at the long table. Constantino looked older under the fluorescent light, the polished authority from the baby shower stripped away. Underneath was something leaner, meaner, a man watching his operation unravel and arriving to salvage what he could. His eyes found Rebel first, then her belly, then the pocket watch on the table between them. "Mrs. Pellegrino," he said, "this has become unnecessarily complicated." "No," Rebel said. "It's become clear. For the first time." Constantino sat, uninvited. Gianluca stood behind him. Dario remained standing. A deliberate choice, height as authority. "Your sister made commitments," Constantino said, "on behalf of your family." "Yeah, a blood alliance between the... My sister was coerced by your organization after you manufactured a dependency from her overdose. Every commitment she made was extracted under duress. None of it is binding, and all of it, every conversation, every exchange, every instruction you gave her, has been recorded and packaged for the Federal Organized Crime Task Force." Constantino's expression didn't change, but his hands did. The fingers of his right hand pressed flat against the table, the involuntary stabilization of a man absorbing impact. "You're threatening federal involvement. I'm informing you that federal involvement begins at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The package is complete. Your operatives at the baby shower, photographed and identified. Your communications with Sable, intercepted and transcribed. Your attorney in Philadelphia, named. Your Port Authority contact, documented." Rebel paused. "Let each sentence land. By tomorrow afternoon, your organization will be the subject of a federal investigation that will take years to resolve and cost everything you've built." "Unless?" Constantino asked, the word of a man who'd spent his life finding exits. "There is no unless. This isn't a negotiation. This is a notification." Constantino looked at Dario, searching for a crack, a deal, the silent language of men who trade power the way other people trade currency. Dario offered nothing. No nod, no counter. just the stillness of a man standing beside his wife while she delivered the killing blow. "Your father owed me a debt," Constantino said to Rebel. A last weapon, an old one, aimed at the wound he thought was still open. Rebel picked up the pocket watch. Held it in front of him. Pearl face, frozen hands, 3:17. "My father owed you nothing. You gave him a choice no father should face, and he chose to protect his daughters. That wasn't debt. That was extortion. And it ends here. Tonight. In this room." She closed the watch. "My baby will never carry your name, never sit at your table, never be currency in your economy. He will be born free, loved, and completely, permanently outside your reach." Constantino studied her for 5 seconds, reading the terrain, calculating whether resistance was worth the federal avalanche waiting 12 hours away. It wasn't, and he knew it. He stood, buttoned his jacket, looked at Rebel one final time. "Your mother was stubborn too," he said, quietly, almost respectfully. "My mother was right," Rebel replied, "and so am I." Constantino walked out. Gianluca followed. The front door closed behind them. And at 11:31 p.m. on Mother's Day, the 25-year siege on the Hartley family ended in the back room of a social club in Bensonhurst. Not with violence, with evidence, with testimony, with a pregnant woman holding her dead mother's pocket watch and refusing to let anyone else write her son's story. 3 months later, August. The baby came on a Tuesday, August 12th, 2:41 a.m., 7 pounds, 2 ounces, dark curls, hands that gripped the doctor's finger before the cord was cut, already holding on, already deciding that this world was worth grabbing. They named him Stellan. Rebel chose it. Not Italian, not American. Something from a language she'd looked up at 3 a.m. during her 7th month. Swedish. Meaning calm, meaning steady. A name that carried no bloodline weight. And no family obligation, no invisible contract signed before its owner could speak. Dario didn't argue. He held his son against his chest in the delivery room and said the name once, quietly, testing its shape in his mouth, and then said it again like he'd been waiting his whole life to say it. Stellan Pellegrino. Rebel watched from the bed, exhausted in the specific way only women who've just performed a miracle understand. Every muscle spent, every fear answered, and underneath the exhaustion, a calm so profound it felt geological, like bedrock finally reaching the surface after years of erosion. Her son was here, safe, free, born into a room where every person present had chosen to be there, not because of obligation or alliance or debt, but because of love, the uncomplicated kind, the kind that doesn't negotiate. The federal case landed 4 days after Mother's Day. Federico delivered the package at 6 a.m. on a Monday. By noon, warrants were issued. By Tuesday evening, Constantino Ferrante was arrested at his home in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Gianluca Ferrante, picked up at a gas station on the turnpike, 2 suitcases in the trunk, passport in his jacket. The Philadelphia attorney served at his office between client meetings, his receptionist watching federal agents walk him out past the water cooler. 14 Ferrante operatives identified from the baby shower surveillance were charged over the following 3 weeks: racketeering, conspiracy, extortion, coercion of a witness, attempted trafficking of a minor, the legal term for what they'd planned to do with Stellan. It reduced to courtroom language that couldn't capture the full weight of what it meant to the woman they'd tried to take him from. The Port Authority contact, a man named Winslow Brege, who'd been facilitating Ferrante cargo movements for 6 years, cooperated within 48 hours of his arrest. His testimony connected the Ferrantes to operations in 3 states and accelerated the investigation beyond anything Federico had projected. Constantino Ferrante's empire didn't collapse dramatically. It deflated, slowly, systematically, like a structure whose foundation had been removed one document at a time until the weight above had nothing left to stand on. Sable testified in June. Federal Courthouse, Newark, closed session. 6 hours on the stand. every question answered fully, every detail provided without evasion. The immunity agreement held, Persephone Drake, the attorney Federigo had connected her with, ensured that Sable's cooperation was documented, verified, and legally protected. Rebel wasn't in the courtroom. Couldn't be. Closed session, witness protection protocols. But she was in the building, fourth floor hallway, sitting on a wooden bench with her hands on her belly and her mother's pocket watch in her lap. When Sable walked out of the courtroom at 4:17 p.m., she looked like someone who'd been disassembled and put back together with fewer parts. Lighter, emptier. The kind of empty that precedes something new growing in. The sisters looked at each other across the hallway. Sable spoke first. Well, it's done. How do you feel? Like I weigh 400 pounds less and I don't know how to walk without the weight. You'll learn. Will you teach me? Rebel stood, crossed the hallway, took her sister's hand. I'll walk next to you. The teaching part. That's on you. Here's the last lesson. The one this story has been building toward since the first sentence. Motherhood doesn't begin in a delivery room. It begins the first moment you stand between your child and anyone who treats them as a transaction. It begins when you look at the people you love, flawed, broken, compromised, and decide that protecting them doesn't mean controlling them. It means showing up, telling the truth, and refusing to let anyone assign a price to something that was always supposed to be free. Rebel became a mother on Mother's Day. Not because of a calendar, because that was the day she drew a line around her son and said, "This child is not for sale. Not to enemies, not to allies, not to the ghosts of debts that were never mine to carry. If you're watching this and you've ever had to fight for someone's freedom, your child's, your siblings, your own, I see you, and I need you to know the fight was worth it. Even when it didn't feel like it, even when the people you fought for didn't deserve it yet. The fight was worth it." The safe house in Red Hook became something Rebel hadn't expected. Not a bunker, not a hideout, a home. Dario had built it with the precision of a man constructing a fortress, security infrastructure, private entrance, no paper trail. But the interior told a different story. Hardwood floors the color of warm bread, and a kitchen designed for someone who cooked the way Rebel cooked, standing, moving, filling rooms with steam and conversation. A nursery painted sage green with a window overlooking the harbor. They moved in August, 1 week after Stellan was born. Not because the brownstone in Park Slope was unsafe, because the brownstone belonged to the version of their marriage that operated on partial information and beautiful silence. The safe house belonged to whatever came next. "We can't call it the safe house forever," Rebel said, standing in the kitchen, Stellan asleep in a bassinet by the window, morning light filling every corner. "What do you want to call it?" "Home. Just home." Dario nodded, poured her coffee, set it on the counter next to the pocket watch. The pocket watch! Rebel had taken it to a horologist in June, and a quiet man in a shop on Mulberry Street who worked on timepieces the way surgeons work on hearts, delicately, reverently, aware that the mechanism held more than gears. "The mainspring is intact," he'd told her. "It stopped because of the note. The paper pressed against the movement created enough friction to halt the balance wheel. Remove the paper, and the watch runs." Her mother's note, the warning about the Ferrantes, the truth about their father, had been the thing stopping the clock. The secret itself had frozen time. Rebel kept the note, placed it in an envelope, filed it in a box with the immunity agreement, Sable's testimony transcript, and the photograph from Stellan's first hour of life. And the watch, freed from the weight of its hidden message, began to tick again. 3:17, 3:18, 3:19. Now 27 years of stillness, ended by the act of bringing a secret into the light. Dario kept his promises, all of them. The Pellegrino operation restructured over the summer. Not overnight. Empires don't become clean between breakfast and dinner. But the direction was permanent. Primo oversaw the transition. Serafina audited the books. Federigo served as the bridge between old operations and new legitimacy. Dario told Rebel everything. Weekly. Standing in their kitchen in Red Hook with coffee and the unvarnished truth of a man dismantling his inheritance, one honest conversation at a time. Some weeks were harder than others. Some truths tasted like medicine, bitter, necessary, slow to heal what they were designed to fix. But he never hid, never curated, never decided on her behalf what she could handle. Now, and Rebel, who'd spent her entire marriage reading textures and silences for the information her husband wouldn't share, learned what it felt like to simply be told. It felt like oxygen after years of breathing through cloth. Sable moved to Portland in September. Not witness protection. Choice. She wanted distance, not from Rebel, but from the geography of everything she'd done. New city, new therapist, a job at a community health clinic that paid a fraction of what Ferrante Intelligence had earned her, and meant more than every dollar she'd ever collected in the dark. She called Rebel every Sunday, without fail. The conversations were different now. Unpolished, stumbling, marked by the awkward honesty of two people learning to speak without performance. "I don't know who I am without the secret," Sable said once, October. I rang on the phone line. "You're my sister," Rebel said. "Start there." "That feels too easy." "It's not, trust me. Being someone's sister, really being it, is the hardest thing you'll ever do." Sable laughed, a real one, small and rough around the edges, but real. Sable met Stellan in November, flew in from Portland, arrived at the Red Hook house carrying a gift wrapped in tissue paper, a children's book about two sisters who build a boat and sail it through a storm. She held the baby carefully, reverently, like she understood that this small body represented every debt she'd canceled, and every choice she'd made to become someone worth trusting again. "He has your stubbornness," Sable whispered. "I can see it already." "Good," Rebel said. "He's going to need it." November evening, the kitchen in Red Hook. Stellan sleeping in his bassinet, harbor lights reflecting off the water outside, the pocket watch on the counter, ticking, keeping time for the first time in 27 years. Dario sat across from Rebel. No folders, no operations, no second phones. Just a man, a woman, a boy, and the hard-won, imperfect breathing truth between them. "Do you think your mother knew," Dario asked, "that the watch would find you at the right moment?" Rebel picked it up, listened to the ticking, steady, small, persistent, the heartbeat of a woman who'd spent her life hiding warnings in seams for daughters she knew would need them. "She knew," Rebel said. "Mothers always know." She set the watch down, pressed her hand over Dario's, felt the warmth of a partnership rebuilt from its own rubble. Imperfect, scarred, and stronger for having survived the demolition. No more hidden notes, no more frozen clocks, no more debts inherited by daughters who never signed for them. Just time, moving forward, the way it was always supposed to. Thank you for being here, every single one of you, for 9 parts, for every comment, every city dropped, every go that pushed this story forward. If something in Rebel's journey reached you, about motherhood, about sisters, about refusing to let anyone price what's priceless, tell me. Drop it below, 1 word, 1 sentence, a whole paragraph, whatever you need to say. This space is yours. And if you're still not subscribed, I mean, come on. You stayed for 9 parts. You're not a visitor. You're family. Make it official. Hit that button. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your hearts. Protect what's yours, and never let anyone tell you that love is a transaction. It's not. It never was.